Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right, folks. Yeah, Hugh made a big mistake.
You blew it!
Yeah, he definitely blew it. We're going to get into this story, and it's going to be controversial. Now, I've been trying to figure out why Hugh Freeze didn't go out and get himself a quarterback. Now, he had Payton Thorne, he's a very average quarterback. He's not terrible by any stretch. Let me make that clear on the front end of this. But he's not elite. And Auburn needs an elite quarterback if you're going to play in the SEC. You cannot have an average team or a slightly above average team and then go into the season with an average quarterback. That's not going to work. You could do that at Georgia. You could do that at Alabama. But you're not going to be able to do that at Auburn. It's not going to work out. I could not figure out for the life of me why he didn't go into the transfer portal and get himself a big-time quarterback and just pay the money. And I didn't know if they just missed out on some guys or what had happened. I saw Brock Vandergrift go to Kentucky. I was like, that would have been an ideal candidate. There were a bunch of other quarterbacks in the portal that he could have gotten, and he stuck with Payton Thorne. Now, I'm going to get into some stuff here that talks about paying players and all that. Now, if you're a traditionalist and paying players anything at all really makes you mad, this is probably not going to be the video for you. Humongous, tell them.
Just walk away.
Yeah, you might want to walk away from this because I'm going to get into the nuts and bolts of how college football works today and what I believe he should have done, and you may not like my opinion, and I don't want to upset you. All right, folks, this is in Football Scoop. This is a great site. In Football Scoop, it's a lot of former coaches and players, and they get a lot of really good inside information. So let's see what Zach Barnett has to say in this article. It says, Hugh Freeze couldn't bring myself to spend $1 million on transfer portal QB. And it says, Hugh Freeze made a risky decision this offseason after getting mediocre quarterback play in 2023. And we're going to get into that here in a minute. He said the options you had were develop Payton, develop Holden, develop Hank, develop Walker, or go spend $1 million on this guy. I just couldn't bring myself to doing that because I wanted to put all the pieces together. Now I'm going to show you Payton Thorne's stats. We'll get into that. And his overall stats, he threw 16 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, had a QB rating of 57.7, which was 69th in the country, and threw for 1,700 yards and change. And here you can see he originally was at Michigan State, and here you'll see his numbers. And he throws for around 60% completion rate. That's low. And he throws a lot of interceptions. He's thrown 31 interceptions in the last 3 years. Now, one thing he did in 2023 that was a good thing, you can see he ran for 515 yards with about a 4-yard average, and realize that includes sacks. So his running average is actually higher than that when he actually takes off and runs. But over 500 yards really helped. And when you look at his previous years, he never ran for more than 181 yards, and the year before that, he only ran for 42. So he has added a wrinkle to his game. But throwing 60% with a bunch of interceptions, that's not going to get the job done. Interceptions kill you. And throwing 60%, that's not going to get it done. So while he's a decent quarterback, this is the SEC, and you're not going to get away with it. You're just not. This is not some easy conference.
You walk over, but you're limping back.
Now, here it talks about the opportunity cost of spending $1 million. And obviously what they're talking about there is you would miss out on a bunch of other guys. You could get a wide receiver. You could get some other offensive players around you. And that's what Hugh did. Hugh brought in a bunch of wide receivers, freshmen, transfer portal guys. And what he tried to do was spend that $1 million on players around him and try to make Payton better that way. And it says if Auburn was going to spend $1 million on a new quarterback, that's $1 million it can't spend to upgrade the roster. They talk about the 14 transfers, including a great receiver from Penn State, Keandre Lambert-Smith, Georgia State's leading receiver, Robert Lewis, and signed the nation's 10th best recruiting class, led by 5-star receiver Cam Coleman. And Auburn did a really good job in recruiting. They spent some money. They've got Yellowwood money down there, so they're not afraid to spend it. But Hugh made the decision that he wanted to spend it elsewhere, and I think that's a huge mistake, a big one.
Big mistake. Big. Huge. I have to go shopping now.
And here Hugh says, I've watched his Michigan State stuff 1,000 times. He had 2 NFL receivers, and he was pretty dang good, Freeze said. There's a lot of things that should be 50-50 balls, and you've got to have a guy that can do that. I think Dre Lambert, he's a 50-50 pass catcher, and obviously we're excited about the ones we signed. Says Freeze didn't rule out dropping a bag on a quarterback in the future, however. Says, now I'm not saying I won't do that in time, but just currently I think the guy's proven. And I hate to call this a wasted year for Auburn because they're a good team. Look, they had Georgia and Alabama beat last year. They were way up on Georgia, and then Carson Beck found his groove and all of a sudden started throwing the ball beautifully, and they came back and won. And they had Alabama beat for sure, except for the worst defensive call in the history of football, rushing 2 people, and allowed Jalen Milroe to sit back there and have a cup of coffee, read the evening paper before he decided to throw the ball, which was a huge mistake. You cannot let a quarterback pick his little spot and have 10 seconds to do so. That was just nuts. But that decision pales in comparison to this. I think this is a terrible decision. And I really hate it for Payton Thorne because it sounds like I'm throwing him under the bus. Look, I played Division I sports. He's a much better athlete than I ever was. I was like a 3-star golfer at UT. And I'm not one of these guys that lives in la-la land. And
it says, back when I was in college, I hit the ball so hard they had to bring me a new dozen balls every round. I'd knock a cover off of it.
No, it wasn't that way. I was very average. But I'm not seeing a whole lot better out of Payton. But Payton is an average starting quarterback, which is a pretty high level. But I keep repeating, this is the SEC. This is not Little Sisters of the Poor or the London Silly Nannies.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
You need guys that can play, and you need quarterbacks that can pull you out of a bad situation and do something that makes a huge difference. And you've got that with the Carson Becks, who I think has really proven himself to be a guy that you can count on when the pressure gets bad. I think he'll pull you out of it. I think Nico Iamaleava is going to be a tremendous quarterback for us. We're paying $2 million a year for this guy, is the understanding, and it's at least that much, if the $8 million is true. And we know that Carson Beck is driving a Lambo, and he wanted $4 million. I'm sure he got at least $2 million. And that's the type of money you need to spend. You need to spend at least $1 million on your starting quarterback. It's the most important. It's 5 times more important than any position on the football field. And the fact that Hugh Freeze doesn't understand that shocks me. But I think because he's a quarterback whisperer, he's always done it this way. He likes to develop quarterbacks. It's kind of it's a pride thing to him. He thinks he can do that with Payton Thorne by surrounding him with great players. While that will certainly help Payton, and I do like the fact that he has learned how to run the football, I would have spent the $1 million. I would have gone after Brock Vandegrift or a proven transfer guy rather than hoping that a guy that played mediocre for the last 3 years, throwing 60%, throwing interceptions, is going to suddenly become, a guy that throws 70% and throws 3 interceptions. That's a much taller ask than going out and spending $1 million on somebody that has been a proven 70% thrower or a guy that can do something that's very dynamic and has a winning history. So I think this was a big mistake. And look, Auburn fans, I'm sorry, but I got to tell you the truth.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Yep, and I'm telling you the truth. This was a mistake. I think Hugh Freeze was a very good hire when it comes to winning. Just like I believe, and I've said this when it happened, that Bruce Pearl was a very good hire, even though he had the show cause and all that. He was a very good hire, and you're going to win with him. Hugh Freeze will get you where you need to get to, but he's going to have to come around on this quarterback thing, or he's going to have to develop a guy into a really good quarterback. One of those two things is going to have to happen. If he thinks he's going to win with an average quarterback, he is living in la-la land. And he ought to know better than that because he's coached in the SEC. So I'm very surprised by this decision. Now I understand why. I could not figure it out for the life of me. I don't know how. I've said it like 10 times in videos. Why didn't Auburn go get a quarterback? Well, now I know why. It's the coach. He decided that he didn't need one. He didn't want to spend the money. And that's that old style thinking. I understand it, but that's not going to work in 2024. So instead of y'all winning 8, 9, 10 games, getting into the playoff, which I think you could have done, you're probably going to win 6, 7, or 8 ball games, and you're not going to get in the playoff. You're going to get a decent bowl game, and then Hugh Freeze will come around, and he'll go get you a quarterback next year. But it's a wasted year, and that's very unfortunate because I think y'all have got a lot of talent there. I really do, and you're a dangerous team. But with Payton there, I don't know. God, I feel like I'm really throwing the guy under the bus, and he's probably a great dude, and again, a better athlete than I ever was. But dang, I'm sorry. This is the big boy league. I'm just telling you the truth. Anyway, if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Let's me know to continue to cover all these big sports stories. If you've not subscribed, hit this little button right here. I'd certainly appreciate it. And right over here is a video that YouTube thinks you'll enjoy based on your viewing history. And I'm glad we spent the money on Nico. I can tell you that. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.